Big week this week. Big news. We are having an old-fashioned manual recount in one of the primary elections here in Washington State this year. It's the race for the State Commissioner of Public Lands. That's the executive position elected every 4 years on the same cycle with the governor. And the Commissioner of Public Lands, of course, is the elected head of the state's Department of Natural Resources, DNR, the agency that manages public timberland in Washington and does some other things with basically public land, natural resources. The interesting thing in this race is it was a crowded primary with 7 candidates in it. 2 preferred Republicans and the others preferred Democrats or other left of center groups. And what happened is one of the Republicans clearly made it through in first position, coming out of the top 2 primary. But the second position coming out of the top 2 primary is an incredibly close race, essentially tied between the top Democrat performer and Sue Keel Peterson, who was the state party endorsed candidate for the Republican side. It really is essentially tied. A total of nearly 2 million votes cast, about 1.9 and change, a million votes cast. The difference for that second position to move on to the general election in November between Sue Keel Peterson and the top performing Democrat, 51 votes. That is less than 1/100th difference, statistically tied. And under state election law, a race so close results in a automatic, a statutory, mandatory recount and not a machine recount. It has to be a manual recount of the paper ballots in all of the 39 counties, the whole state. Focusing just on that one race, of course. They don't look at the governor or other races, just at the Commissioner of Public Lands race. That's happening right now. And all sides interested in the election are consulting with their lawyers. We here at the Washington State Republican Party are consulting with ours, multiple lawyers, and we are preparing to help the state perform this manual recount, and of course observe it and try to make sure there's no tricky business, no strange things development, no boxes of ballots get found after the last counts were made a few days ago. So we're going to keep our eye on what's going on. We are arranging right now through the state Republican Party our sort of structure for volunteers. Remember that each of the 39 counties in Washington State will handle its recount separately according to its own local rules and customs, but following state law. They all follow state law, but under the management of each of the 39 county election officials and 38 of the counties in our state. That's the county auditor. In King County, it's the separately elected elections administrator. So the county auditors and equivalent organizations, offices, they manage the recount. They will use their election staff, usually at your county courthouse or adjacent administrative building, to perform the recount. There will be observers for the candidates as well as the political parties. There will be people watching the recounts. This is not a machine recount. So generally what will happen is in each of the counties, they'll organize the paper ballots, usually by precinct, and then review the ballots precinct by precinct. We had a good conversation today with the State Secretary of State's office, their election officials, and there is a system in place for performing this manual recount. The state secretary of state will send an official notice to the counties in the next day or so that the manual recount must take place according to state law, because the race for the second position there is essentially tied. And then there is a recommended process and timeline for the counties to follow. Each of them have some latitude to start and finish the manual recount according to their own practices, but the state can put a final deadline on when the manual recounts have to be completed. Likely that's sometime the first week of September, sometime around the 3rd or 4th of September, so after Labor Day. So it can start as early as this Friday, and then go for approximately 2 weeks, maybe a little less. And it's going to be an old-fashioned recount. And people will look at the ballots and confirm the results that were reported in the primary during the first counts, the certification, and we'll see what happens. We will be aggressively reviewing all the 39 counties' practices in their manual recounts. We also may be raising in court some issues that we are concerned about in a few of the counties, where we think maybe there were some cured ballots that may not have complied with the state law and best practices on curing ballots. So there may be some lawsuits, but the gist of what's going to happen in this manual recount is we're going to be watching the review of those paper ballots like hawks. We are not going to sit by idly here. We have our system in place already. Frankly, we kind of anticipated that this was a possibility. We didn't realize how close it was going to be, but we aggressively cured those ballots in the last couple of weeks, and now our focus moves from curing those ballots to watching the recount and making sure that every vote gets properly counted. In the end, we are optimistic that Sue Keel-Peterson is going to get through this primary and be on the general election ballot in November. But this is why they play the game. We'll find this out in the next week or 10 days, and we are going to be watching closely and actively involved in making sure this manual recount goes the right way. That's it for this week. We'll be talking more and more ahead, but in the meantime, stay strong and be well, and I'll talk to you again soon.